We've processed more than 30 million videos through this thing, 100,000 videos plus in the last month alone, delivered back to customers within 8 hours with an expert in the loop.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Slator Pod. Today on the podcast, we welcome Josh Miller and Christopher Toons. So Josh and Chris are co-CEOs and co-founders at 3Play Media. Now, 3Play Media is a leading language solutions integrator for video accessibility and localization. They combine proprietary tooling, advanced AI, and expert-in-the-loop solutions. So hi, Josh and Chris, and thanks so much for joining today.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, Florian. Thanks for having us.
Very, very cool to have you on today. So first, I want to talk a bit about the background. We always do that on the podcast, get a bit of a feel for the company, for the founders, what's kind of been the trajectory so far. So tell us a bit more about maybe your own professional background, origin of the company, and then kind of take us to the elevator pitch of what you're doing now to kind of set the scene.
So I'm Chris, like Florian said, one of our co-founders. Met Josh, more than 15 years ago at MIT. We both had, and all four of our founders, so we had four originally. So I don't know if we'll get into this, but the co-CEO model is much easier than having four founders. That is for sure. But we all met at MIT and only had a few years of professional experience before that. Mine was in consulting, Josh's was as well. But at MIT, got started on 3Play, focused on a very specific problem for a group at MIT called OpenCourseWare. And this was a group that was putting engineering courses at MIT online for free. This is a common model now, e-learning. There's companies like Coursera that I know is in the news on the dubbing side recently.
Yeah.
But MIT was putting courses online, and they were funded by the Hewlett Foundation to do that. And it was their funding, not any regulation at the time, that required their video be accessible. So at that time, that meant closed captioned. So the thousands of videos that they wanted to put in, all technical, had to go up online and be accessible. And at the time, back in 2007, 2008, closed captioning, and we'll get into the language translation and dubbing and audio description, but captioning was very expensive, right? There weren't solutions that were leveraging AI meaningfully that could drive the price down and make this economical and feasible for MIT. So their group, like legitimately 75% of their budget would have been absorbed by captioning this video, and it was just untenable. So we were presented with this problem of, can you help? And that was really it. So business problem first, customer problem first. And, Josh can jump in a second, but exuberance of youth, four of us at MIT, we thought we'll solve this problem by the end of the afternoon with AI. It wasn't called AI back then, data science or speech recognition in our world. And so we worked with the professor, Jim Glass, in the computer science and artificial intelligence lab to try to solve that problem. And by the end of that afternoon, we realized AI wasn't sufficient. Speech recognition wasn't sufficient, but it was a really good start. And literally, we have speech recognition in Excel, sitting there, cell by cell, looking at the cells and thinking about what we might need to do to clean up. And there's a lot of steps to fast forward through here, but to solve that problem for MIT, day one, first customer, first problem we were introduced, we needed AI and we needed tools, because no tools existed out in market that could do what we wanted to do, which was take the speech recognition and produce captions efficiently. So we had to build it. And then we needed people. And first it was us, and then it was our friends that we could wrangle into it. But very soon it became evident we needed lots of people to address this issue at scale. So it was AI, it was tooling we developed, and it was a marketplace of people at massive scale to solve this problem. And it was from the beginning. And we'll come back to this, I'm sure, again and again, but none of this is retrofit. Our idea of how do we do this at scale and maintain quality and maintain consistency across all these services was built into it day one.
Yeah, I think some of that's even the function of being at MIT and the business school there, and everything's about technology and scale and avoiding manual workflows and things like that. So it was kind of drilled into us from the beginning, but it was even kind of why we went to MIT in the first place, is to do something interesting with technology at scale. So from the very beginning, as Chris said, we were looking at this a little bit differently and kind of how can we take what is a solution that's out there, right? There were captioning providers out there, and there were language providers out there. So what were they doing that we either wanted to emulate or wanted to avoid? And we thought very, very carefully about that. I do think it's worth pointing out even the context and doubling down on what Chris said of the timing This is end of 2007, beginning of 2008. There's absolutely no regulation around web video for accessibility. The only regulation is around broadcast video. Netflix has not started streaming yet. They're still shipping DVDs. YouTube is just getting going. So, I mean, it's early days of online video. And one of the most important things we did was actually avoid the media market in the beginning, because there were providers and we didn't have the right to win yet. We didn't have the differentiation that we were aiming to build. So we very, very purposely focused on this emerging market of web video, and kind of saw the tea. I guess you kind of saw the tea leaves that there was going to be regulation, or certainly hoped there was going to be regulation, but also recognized that that's where there was going to be the potential for explosive growth.
And then was it bootstrapped since you had a customer kind of from day one, and you just
Yeah, it was
leveraged that into growth?
those were the days. There were four of us in an apartment just after we graduated from MIT. We did soon afterwards raise angel investment, but we were able to build a profitable, growing company pretty much from the beginning. Since, like you pointed out, we had customers first, and after MIT, many customers in the education segment, in the higher ed segment right afterwards. This trend continued, and then e-learning emerged, and then, like Josh mentioned, online video and streaming came afterwards, and then we helped Netflix caption a backlog of content. Like it's sort of stacked one after another. So we raised some angel, and then much later in the journey raised more institutional capital.
Got it. Yeah, I think I listened to another podcast, accessibility podcast you did a couple of months ago, where you said it was always it's been profitable very early on, and then you kind of never went back to the Series A, B, C, D type of financing.
It's in the DNA, and I do think an important part of these human in the loop, or call them expert in the loop models, is when we'll get into the AI, I'm sure, and we'll get into the tooling, and we'll get into the orchestration and the infrastructure, which is all magic and all certainly a force multiplier in your ability to scale and drive efficiency. But at the end of the day, 95% plus of this is still people. And it's still experts, and it's still artisans across all of these tasks. And really understanding the unit economics and understanding of how to do that in a way that's profitable for us, but also makes sense for your customer. You need to start there, because unlike pure technology businesses, you need to be thinking about cost. You need to be thinking about the economic model from the beginning.
I think what's so important there is that even though it's still heavily people to get it right, it means we're able to process 10, 20, 100 times the amount of content in the same time frame. That's the big difference, is kind of what kind of scale we can unlock.
So you started with kind of English closed captioning, and then you really pushed towards a unified platform where you now offer accessibility, localization, workflow. So it's not a service, not just a solutions and services business with thousands of people, but you have a ton of tech now. Can you just tell a bit more about the platform, and then also what kind of customers, maybe top 2-3 segments that you have?
So I think you're hitting on something really important here, because I think there are two constituencies that we have to think about when it comes to scaling and the platform. One side is the customer experience and making sure that scales, and the other side is the operational experience and making sure that scales. And so it's almost like two platforms in one, or like a two-sided platform in a way. And so one of the things early on that we had to address was the reality that web video publishers, in many cases in the beginning, educational institutions, enterprises, where you've got people who've really never dealt with video before, all of a sudden being tasked with do this new thing. And there are these video platforms coming around, not beyond YouTube, things like Brightcove and Kaltura and many more. It was very clear that we had to simplify the workflow. And so that was a combination of having a very easy to use platform to self-serve almost, in the sense of feeling like a web app. So there might be, customer success and support like you would with any web application, but ultimately you as the user could do everything yourself. No Excel files flying around about when files were coming or anything like that. And then similarly, integrate directly into the video platform and make that a fully automated workflow. So those were things that we were thinking about very, very early on that would actually be part of the scale story. And also that just a really great differentiated customer experience, because we knew that the providers that did exist weren't doing anything like that. And then we had to extend the same concepts to the operational side and figure out how do we actually make that scale too.
Well, and Josh, I mean, in terms of end markets, our three primary end markets are media and entertainment, traditional media and entertainment, higher education, e-learning, and then corporate. And corporate is a bit of a catch-all. But at the end of the day, if you have video, you're a potential customer of ours. I mean, full stop, right? Because our goal, our mission is to make video accessible. And that can mean to a community like the deaf or blind community, or it could mean in any language to anyone in the world. So if you have video, so we had to build a process, and this I think is a good segue into the platform, that could handle the scale we anticipated, but also the quality expectations and variability in quality expectations. Because different segments expect different quality. Absolutely.
That is a very tricky one. That the variability. Some where you need perfections, other where it's like, well, I'm actually okay with 98%.
And everyone defines it differently. That's the reality. Yeah. So what one person says is perfection, another segment entirely might say that's not usable.
Yeah. And this maps directly to the platform or the assembly line that we need to build. And I use that term endearingly, not derogatorily in any way. And what I mean by that is we have to process. I mean, we've processed more than 30 million videos through this thing. 100,000 videos plus in the last month alone, delivered back to customers within 8 hours with an expert in the loop. So not just AI. And these are customers with really high quality expectations and discerning requirements. But every video is different. Every set of expectations is different. Every industry is different. Every use case is different. But we need a process that scales and scales consistently across all those every day. So tens of thousands of videos flowing through the system. And what the platform allows us to do by owning the AI, the sort of integrating the AI models, owning the tooling, owning all of the instrumentation and data collection inside that allows us to have observability and allows us to constantly improve it, enhance it, and customize it scalably for all those different use cases.
I want to talk about AI, but I don't want to talk about AI super broadly right from the start. So let me try to kind of pick one area, which is multilingual audio description, one angle. So I think multilingual audio description has become a pretty good area for growth for you. And it seems like it's an area where kind of major media companies feel more comfortable at adopting AI-generated voices. So A, would you agree? And B, is this like a gateway for AI voice adoption versus maybe, like AI dubbing, where it's a little bit trickier?
We spent the first 10 plus years or longer of 3Play as an accessibility company. So audio description and captioning centrally focused on English and Spanish, basically North American customers. And three big trends over the last, call it 18 months, have gotten us really excited about global multi-language audio description and localization, subtitling and dubbing. Subs and dubs aren't new, as you know better than anyone. They've been around for a long time. We were not centrally focused on that. So I'll just run through these three trends quickly, and then one of them will connect directly to audio description. I'll let Josh take that. So the first is what you said, the European Accessibility Act, which is a regulatory change in Europe, which is driving a higher standard of accessibility. Video is a big part of that, and it maps directly into dubs. And again, I'll save that for Josh on the audio description side. We saw that coming, and we are really good at audio description at scale. We do a lot with media companies already. Global language was on the way. 2, voice technology trends, which we'll get into. We were not interested in building traditional brick and mortar studios and scaling dubbing in that way. But with voice technology, we are good at building tools that people can pilot from home and use our marketplace to scale it. That technology trend made us really interested in what we can do in dubbing. And then the third is live events. So you see big streaming platforms start to own sports rights, event rights, and those events, they want to get out to the world really quickly because they have an expiring clock in lots of languages. The idea of high quality, fast, is very exciting to us. And it's not there yet. State of the art is not high quality Netflix theatrical or high-end theatrical subtitles or dubs with human in the loop in hours. It's still days, right? But we have a dream of saying, could we make that hours? And those three things, one a regulatory trend, one a market trend, and one a technology trend, made us super excited about bringing the 3Play platform into localization. And then Josh, EAA and dubbing, audio description specifically.
I think the audio description storyline at 3Play is an interesting one here, because if we go back 10 years before we launched any audio description at all, we had a couple customers come to us and say, "Hey, can you do audio description?" We said, "No, we're not doing that." And a lot of it was because it was really complicated. Audio description is not straightforward. And so we were avoiding it for a long time, until all of a sudden some things were happening with some regulations online, and there were some things happening with some of our university customers, and we started getting the requests more and more. And so we had a conversation at one of our annual retreats, and it was still a small team, and we looked at each other and said, "Do we need to do this?" And we said, "Okay, well, if we do it, we got to do it differently." And so that was one of the things that I think prepared us for what we're doing now, because from day one, we were using synthesized voice, even for English audio description. And so we built that out with a really thoughtful approach to script writing. So the human is still heavily involved in the script writing, and we can talk about AI script writing as well. But we put together a really thoughtful process. We were interviewing Perkins School for the Blind. We were interviewing, setting up studies with blind students, and testing it really carefully to bring it to market, recognizing, just like Chris was saying, like, we're not going to replace a lot of the audio description being done today for theatrical content. That's not the point. There is just so much content out there that is not accessible. And the schools are struggling to figure out how to make classroom content accessible for a blind student. And there's just no way they're going to pay $30 a minute for audio description. So it was very clear there was something that we could disrupt. So we built that out. We started to really bring that to market. And it was actually a conversation not quite a year ago. We were really excited about what we had started to build with dubbing and subtitling. And we were in LA having some conversations with some of our customers and even some prospects. And we said, "Hey, we want to get your feedback on this new localization stuff we're doing." And they said, both conversations, I will not forget this, both of them said, "I'm sure it's great. We have a different problem we need you to help with." And that was about this EAA thing. And they said, "We need to understand what you can do with multilingual audio description. And we're open to synthesized voice." And a lot of this is around, again, a lot of content, limited budget, limited time frames, and the perception, and I think an accurate one, that the synthetic voices have gotten a lot better. And so there is, again, not all content's equal, and we need to figure out, how do we make content accessible. So I think, Florian, to your original question, is this the gateway? I'd say yes.
And Florian, it's the technical answer to that question of why is it a gateway? It's a couple of things. Audio description is simpler than dubbing. Yep. It just is. It's typically not filled with emotion in the same way, or as much acting. It can still be well acted, but not as much. It's you don't need to worry about lip syncing, right? Because it's more of a voiceover style of description. There, you still need to fit the descriptions into the empty spaces in the audio, but it's a simpler task. Also, audio description is principally consumed by blind users. It is not consumed as widely, let's say, as a German dub in Germany might be. So it's safer because the audience is smaller. And also, the reality is, what are you used to? The reality of how the internet works today is anyone who's blind and using a screen reader is using synthetic voice all day. There is not a voice actor riding alongside you as you operate the internet. It is synthetic voice all of the time. So you're used to that synthetic voice already, and there's not as maybe big of a bar to climb or a hurdle to climb. Whereas in media, traditional dubbing, obviously, aside from even like sort of the sort of calm political issues to navigate, there's just an expectation of a certain bar and a certain quality, and that's real, and that's been there for a while. It's different in the audio description setting.
I think that point is so critical for the first gateway, which was synthetic voice with informational content. So whether it be educational or corporate, like a corporate product video, that's where having synthetic voice 5 years ago wasn't as big of a deal. And there was definitely conversations around, is it ready for media content? And a lot of people said no. We were working with media companies back then, and we're certainly doing so more now. But the improvement of the synthetic voice actually does make it sound human now, and without the emotional issues, it sounds really good. And so it's harder to even make the argument that it's robotic or anything like that anymore. The other thing that I think is so critical here is the reality that we're not cloning, we're not matching, we're not mimicking somebody's likeness when it comes to audio description. There's no source, right? Where we are creating that audio track from scratch. Whereas obviously with dubbing, you're creating a copy of sorts from some original source, which just opens up a different set of issues.
Is there any research on like how much longer people can now listen to an audio description without tiring because the quality has gotten so much better? Or I would assume, like, let's say the 10-year ago robotic voice, I would have just zoned out after maybe 10, 15 minutes. But now I guess I could listen to the new ones for a little longer. Although let's say you have these notebook LM podcasts from Google that you can turn your notes into a podcast. After 5-10 minutes, I'm like, oh my God, like it is good, but it's still has a little bit of this kind of repetitiveness to it.
It's a good question. For audio description, I think it's still early days. With the improvement in voice is happening so rapidly. I don't think there have been any good studies yet about, as far as at least the studies I know of, that map back to the improvement in the quality and the emotion in the voice. But it's an interesting question.
I mean, Amazon was very early in being, public as a major streamer doing synthetic voice audio description, and they got some negative feedback early on, and they kind of went back to the drawing board, figured out why was it a problem, and yes, there were some technical things that they could tweak and things they could do to improve the voice. A lot of it came down to good script writing, and ultimately, is it a good description or not? That's what's going to keep people involved and engaged. So I think they take a stance, and I can't speak for them, but the script writing is so critical for good description, more so than the voice even.
Tell me more about the script writing. I'm really like ignorant about it. So you're saying AI is maybe helpful, but it's not fully kind of used yet, or like what's a good script writing look like? And then if you have that original script, is the translation also slightly different, or is it just kind of just a normal translation done by a pro? Or
audio description, and we'll talk about translated audio description for global language. Audio description has three components. You have a video that you receive, and then there's 3 steps. You write a script to describe what's happening, only the relevant things happening in the video. It's for someone who can't see. So imagine you're watching that movie and you need to be, you need the scenes described. So script writing, step 1. Step 2, voice generation. So take that script and translate it to voice. And then 3, mixing. So ultimately mix that back with the original video. All 3 of those steps can be done by people. They can be done by money rounds of people, or they could be done entirely by AI or a mix. I would say most commonly today, we will have an expert write the script, maybe assisted by AI. So we might use an AI draft first in some cases, but ultimately someone is responsible for editing or creating from scratch or approving that script. And then we'll use voice technology for the voice, and then we'll automate the mix. So 2 out of 3 steps, automation or AI. If you do, so where's the state of the art in AI script writing? I would say, like in all tasks, the AI is better than people at some things and much, much worse at other things. And one of the things it's worst at is judgment. And we certainly want someone with really good judgment to be the final arbiter of what stays in that description. I mean, we know about hallucinations and things where the AI can sort of go off the rails a bit there. But I think one area where it is very good is in factual identification of things in videos.
Okay.
The font might be really small and hard to read, or there might be a logo. Imagine someone doesn't know without a lot of research. An AI model can usually detect that thing and describe it quite well.
And the judgment part, and then we can move on. But like the judgment part would be, it would describe things that a human just would know that, okay, don't describe the tree behind the building because nobody cares about the tree behind the building.
It's the pertinence, it's the context, and kind of how important is that item or that object or that movement in the scene for someone to understand what's going on. just because a car is driving by, it's not the fact that it's a car, it's the fact that it is the red car that was in the scene before, right? And just understanding that that's the important part of it, is really important.
All right, let's go to the dubbing you mentioned. I think I checked in Q2 2024, so like roughly 18 months ago, you launched your human in the loop dubbing solution. So how has it been past 1.5 years? Traction, clients, experiences?
We've got all of the above. I mean, I think we've learned more than we had in the last year and a half. I think we've learned more than we had in the last 5 years about, this industry, certainly. And in just even in product development, I mean, we built a product that I think was really good for some of our customers, but not all of our customers. And I think we initially, and in the last few months, we've completely changed that to to really go after what has become a really emerging media demand, which I think is fascinating. So to make that more clear, we have a ton of customers in the e-learning space and the corporate space who are looking at this as an opportunity to distribute content when they had never been able to really localize their content in this type of engaging way. What their standard is for good dubbing is completely different from what a media company would consider good dubbing. And a lot of that comes down to, their anchoring. What are they used to? Nothing versus something really good. And so that was a very real, both a good thing and a bad thing for how we were building the product.
If you zoom out with this whole dubbing market and kind of what's happening here, on the high end, you have obviously traditional dubbing, theatrical level dubbing, where obviously, Florian, you could be paying $400, $500, $600 per minute to dub something into German or Korean or a language that's difficult. And on the other extreme, with full AI, and AI dubbing is as a category, means a lot of things, but AI only with no human intervention at any step, you might be paying cents. Our bet is there's a big market in the middle. Yeah. And there's sort of two categories in that market, I'd say. And Josh alluded to them. There's first-time dubbers. There's companies, there's whole use cases, there's whole markets that never could afford the economics. We started with talking about unit economics and building a profitable business, could never afford $300, $400, $100 a minute, just out of scope. But their brand matters to them and they're not interested in cents. So we're discovering, I'd say, together, and I think the market is largely in a discovery phase now on both directions. Builders and buyers, we're all discovering together. We're discovering what the right price is. We're discovering what the right quality target is. And we're discovering how we build that scalably for them. And scalable and repeatable quality is a big topic. You can do it once for a demo. Can you do it 1,000 times? Right. And so I think that market is still in the discovery phase. We're figuring out expectations. We're figuring out even the price points because there's a wide range. And what's exciting about 3Play, or for me at 3Play, is the dynamism in this market. There are so many use cases, so much configurability, and it's so much more complex. And I love this problem, and I can geek out over it for hours. The product and recovery engineer in me will love to do that because it's so complex. It's not an AI or person choice. There's literally 10 different steps strung together with multiple AI and tooling and expert stops along the way. And I think ultimately that's a big advantage for 3Play because we love complex problems that require orchestration like this. And dubbing is an order of magnitude more challenging, I'd say, than captioning or description for that reason.
And what you said is really true, that like a prototype, a demo, a pilot, it's just one thing, but then you want to do it at scale, it all breaks down, right? Even some of the platforms I log in, I spin up my little video, and then it takes even that little video, it takes 30 minutes to render right now. That's one 5-minute clip. I guess if you want to do this at scale and 30 languages becomes a problem that you seem to like.
I struggle with this. I'd love to grab a beer someday and dive into this. I struggle with this as across any business. I think demos in a lot of cases, if there's human in the loop or if there's expert in the loop in like a model like ours, the whole demo process is broken. What do you learn dubbing one video that's 3 minutes long into one language? You learn that someone can perform all sorts of magic that's unnatural to produce that 3-minute video. But you don't learn anything about what the experience will look like in production at any sort of real scale. So how do you figure that out together in some sort of testing or trial or POC process? That's an unsolved problem. And it's one I think, we all need to think about together.
Yeah, I mean, we saw some of that issue just in captioning, but I agree, it's very much magnified in dubbing when there are so many different steps, and there are really experienced providers out there who know how to throw a lot of people at a problem. And again, going back to our origin, we're not here to throw a lot of people at a problem. We'll throw people at a problem, but in really, really thoughtful ways. And the whole premise here is, how do we look at those 10 or 15 tasks that are required to create a good dub, and understand, one, for the customer and the use case, which tasks apply first, and then two, which tasks require human intervention, and really, really think through that carefully. I mean, we're seeing it now in some of the demos with media companies, and some of them are starting to figure out, and I applaud them for this, how to try to weed out, kind of some of the fake it till you make it, which is, we're not going to tell you what kind of content we're going to send you, and we're gonna give it to you on this date, and we're gonna put a deadline on it, right? And so there's only so much, fake, throw a lot of people at it that you can do when you can't really prepare for it.
All right, can we talk about the European Accessibility Act, the EAA? So I don't know, the TLDR, where are we at the various stages of its rollout? I'm based in Europe, but I'm in Switzerland, so I'm slightly detached from the European Union. So tell me a bit more, like, how big of a deal is it? How does it impact the North American market, if at all? And how much of an opportunity is it for companies like yours?
It's a great question. I mean, the quick answer is, I think we're in the early days, but we're learning a lot. And so it's certain, we're seeing different approaches from different companies. We started to hear it early on from certainly our enterprise clients who have business in Europe. They need to be prepared. And I think for them, it's a little more straightforward, to be honest. It's a little easier to say, okay, we do business here. We have to be accessible. Our websites have to be accessible. The videos that support our product launches have to be accessible. Pretty straightforward. That's pretty easy. Now, what we don't know yet is the enforcement around that. That's still very early. It just went into effect. We've seen a couple of sightings, but there's not a whole lot of activity yet, because I think there's a reasonable approach here that, like, let's give people a chance to get it right and not go too crazy. But I think we'll see soon more examples being made of companies that ignore it. The media industry is a little bit more diverse, I'd say, in their approach. We have a number of companies who we're working with today who've said, we're not screwing this up. We're not going to make a mistake. Let's go. We got to get ready. And we got to start implementing. We had a couple companies that we were working with literally on day zero. They were ready for the launch of the EAA in June this year. We have other companies that we work with who say, look, we need to know what's possible. We need to be ready, but we're going to wait and see. And a lot of that is that there's some different interpretation of the law itself. That, this is where, I'm going to say we'd like to play Switzerland and just be, not take a side necessarily, but try to be an educator and share what we understand. And there are some legitimate ways to interpret the law the way it's written, to the point that the lawmakers have actually gone back and said, we messed up, we weren't clear enough. And so what that means is there's some discrepancy around, is it the supporting tools around the media that must be accessible, or is it the media itself that needs to be accessible? It is vague enough to interpret either one. Now, a number of media companies have said it's not really up to the EAA to make that decision. It should fall under the European Media Freedom Act, the EMFA, to make that call. And there are conversations right now about that legislation being updated to kind of take over where the EAA left off. But I'd say we're early days, but I think there is a common thread that pretty much every media company is looking at this and trying to figure out how can we be ready.
And Florian, I mean, obviously, like the regulatory environment's more complex because every member nation has their own policies and enforcement practice, and there's a lot to figure out there still. But just like to make it concrete in the localization space, what we're talking about around video, that I think still needs to be, ultimately determined. And I think there'll be more guidance coming from the body itself. And I think there'll be enforcement that helps to set precedent. But really, it's if I'm a streaming platform and I've been distributing content in pick any European country, and I've been dubbing into 40 languages, well, all 40 of those dubs now, in theory, create a requirement to be closed captioned and audio described. That is a significant problem at scale for a lot of companies that have significant distribution in Europe, even if they're North American based.
That's right. And so what's important there is that this is an unplanned budgeting exercise. And so we go back to what we were talking about before, this idea of synthetic voice being used for multilingual audio description. This is where it's not a square peg round hole anymore. It's square peg square hole, because it is so important that they can continue to distribute this content, because it's a moneymaker for them, and they need to figure out how to do it. And it can only continue to be positive ROI if they have a reasonable approach budget-wise to make it all accessible. To your initial question, Florian, the thing for us that's so interesting is we're still based in North America predominantly. We are really working with US-based and Canadian companies who are extending their reach into Europe. We have barely scratched the surface of working directly with European-based companies, which would be the next phase of our growth in terms of the EAA and kind of where that goes. So, we're still early ourselves.
Come to SlatorCon in London. It's London. It's not UK. It's not the EU anymore, but there's a lot of Europeans going to be there. So you guys are a bit of a competitor to ours because you also publish research. You published the State of ASR in 2025 report, and I looked it up, and it says you looked at more than 1,000 video files, over 200 hours of content, and 1.7 million words. So tell us the key findings of this.
So this is something we do, and we're definitely not a competitor on the research side. We work together. So this is something we did internally. This is a theme with 3Play. This is something we did internally for a long time, and we just thought it might be of interest to the market. And we're really biased, but in a really good way. And I'll explain what that means. We consume ASR all day. Like I mentioned, 30 million videos processed, tens of thousands of videos every day. And on the captioning side, our first step is ASR. And then we put that ASR in front of people and they clean it up. And we are more invested than pretty much anyone in the world in getting the absolute best ASR so we can speed up that task for people. So we are religious about testing every model. And this is true for all of our human in the loop or expert in the loop services, because the real cost isn't in the AI. The real cost to us and ultimately to our customers is in the time it takes to get the AI to an acceptable level of quality. So we measure that everywhere, and we're religious about driving it down. So we're testing all the engines anyways, so we know which engine to use and in which use case. And so really all we do is take the results of that test and share them with the world because we think it would be of interest. I would say this year, the main finding is that there was a material leap forward, not like an earth-shattering one, but there was a material leap forward about a year ago with the generative models entering the mix, with the Whisper model, so the LLM or generative AI models entering the mix, Assembly and Whisper most notably. This year, the results kind of plateaued. So we had a big leap forward, but largely the results were the same as they were a year ago. And for English recorded audio, speech recognition is pretty good now.
Pretty good.
It's pretty good. And I think we all experience that. And it still is highly dependent on scenario. So the example I always give, which, resonates with sports fans at least, is if you have, Jim Nance at the Masters, this golf tournament, professionally recorded in a studio, single speaker. That speech recognition is going to be pretty close to perfect. If you're transcribing a focus group for, let's say, a major CPG company, and they've hidden the microphone in a plant somewhere, and there's 10 people speaking over each other, the speech recognition is useless. It's still situation dependent. But for the clean audio single speaker cases, the speech recognition's gotten really good. It just didn't get much better last year.
Yeah, I think what we're also seeing is we have the large language model phenomenon, which is great. There's been a lot of talk, and I think appropriately so, about like small language models, right? And so kind of getting more focused on the content itself. And we do this automatically already. The idea of, can you build customer specific, kind of vocabulary sets and models and domain specific models, things like that, that can actually target the type of content you're getting. And I think that's where we're seeing improvements. It's not the broad ASR off the shelf, that you can get now. So that's where we go back to, and this, believe deeply that ASR is a great tool. AI is a great tool, depending on how it's implemented. And it takes someone pretty sophisticated, I think, to actually get a ton of value out of it, as opposed to some value out of it.
For the AI that you're using generally across the business, for ASR, for dubbing, for all of that, I think you're agnostic, right? Engine model agnostic, infrastructure is built, so it doesn't really matter which model leads, you can plug in.
Yeah, and I think we thought hard about this. We have a data science team. We have a head of data science who has deep experience in NLP, built speech recognition models in a number of stops before joining. And we thought hard about this, but we really think of it as a feature and not a bug. And I think that's proven true, especially in the last 18 months with the just massive and rapid improvement and dissemination or propagation of new models. So the first reason we do it is like I said before, all of the cost really here for us is in the people, time and the time on task. And so we need to have the best engine for every task all the time to minimize that time on task to produce the quality we need. And that, so we invest in that. Second, we have, because our whole business is starting with AI and sort of cleaning it up, we have tons of data naturally. So we don't have to invest in very expensive evaluation harnesses. We can literally take a new model, plug it in, and A/B test model A against model B, and we'll get 10,000, data points tomorrow. Because we literally process that much content. So we have like sort of built-in rapid learning environment. And we have an ecosystem, a marketplace of thousands and thousands of experts who can essentially do that evaluation for us in a real world context. So it makes a lot of sense in our environment.
So let's close on growth strategy. So initially you said you took on some angel and then, a lot of profitable growth. And then in 2019, you took on some outside investment, I think PE firm, growth PE. What about M&A? Anything in the past and any plans for the future? What would make sense for you to acquire?
It's interesting. Literally on day 2 of working with a private equity firm for us, which was 6 years ago, they're starting to show you opportunities. So it is built into the process of how do we grow fast, right? So organic or inorganic, their game for anything. So that was a big change for us, is to think that way. And so over the years, we've had plenty of conversations. For us, it needs to be a really good fit. It has to make sense for our initiatives. So there's no perfect answer to say absolutely. What we can say is we don't have a mandate to go acquire companies to grow. We have a lot of great organic growth in front of us right now with everything we're doing, which we're really excited about, more so than we've seen in a long time with everything that's happening, which is really great. But we're always open-minded. We always look at what we're doing and try to look at the landscape, and even lots of companies put themselves up for sale. We are always looking to be thoughtful, and if it can add a ton of value, we're going to think about it. If it can't, then that's fine too. But it's something that we're always evaluating. But it must be one thing or another.
And I would say our sort of growth strategy is not an inorganic growth strategy where we want to buy a lot of things and that's the way we'll sort of generate revenue and generate profit. But if we see interesting opportunities that align with our roadmap, we're going to look at all of them. And as we look out into next year, we're making a lot of investments on the data science side. We're making a lot of investments on localization expertise, right? To surround real localization subject matter experts around this thing we're building, so that we can make it as exceptional as we possibly can. That's an area of interest. There's specific use cases. We're pretty wide in terms of the use cases we serve for all these products, but there's some like that are like, the YouTube content creator use case is really interesting on the dubbing
That
side
one's really
now.
interesting. Yeah.
So there's areas like that where there's some companies that are small doing really interesting things that might be interesting targets for us as well.
I've been waiting for this to like become like almost a mainstream, I don't know, vertical or horizontal or whatever you want to call it, the YouTube creator. Like, some of them are very big. They will eventually want to go international. The YouTube AI dubs aren't great. And, but the logic is just so obvious. Like,
Yes.
Oh my
now
goodness,
with
we
with
could talk for another 2 hours just about that.
Yeah.
This is definitely a focus area for us.
I mean, just thinking, like, you can go to YouTube and you click and you have 10 audio tracks, like on Netflix. Like, how obvious can it be?
That, and from a content publisher perspective, I mean, when you think about dubbing and localization, at the core of it, to monetize the localized content, you have to have a way to distribute that content in another country. What YouTube solves for everyone immediately is distribution. It is a phenomenal concept that people maybe don't even appreciate enough, but literally you have to do nothing to start monetizing other than localizing your content. Whereas we talk with some of our existing customers who say, yeah, we're thinking about, expanding into Europe. We have to set up a sales team there and sell the content there and find partners there. I mean, that's going to be 2 years before they're ready to actually dub their content. Whereas with the YouTube creator or even a media company publishing on YouTube, it's ready to go. It's a
You need 2,000
fascinating-
subscribers.
I think the thing to solve there, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Like another nice feature here is there's a single decision maker.
Yeah.
It is the content creator almost always making a call, not a committee of buyers, and they are moving fast, certainly relative to traditional media companies, and they'll take on risk, right? And they'll iterate and they'll learn quickly, and a lot of them operate like almost like at a bigger scale, maybe not the 2,000 subscriber ones, but the ones with 20 million operate like little technology companies.
Yeah.
They're rapidly learning. They're making really bold and quick decisions. And like you said, like if you can prove that this makes sense at a certain quality level and opens up a market so they can monetize it in one language, why not go into 50? There's an economic model to figure out who pays. Do the advertisers pay? Do the content producers pay? Does a vendor like 3Play pay? And there's a licensing arrangement. There's a lot to work out. But I agree with you, Florian. It's definitely a no-brainer, and it's coming.
So you mentioned a couple of things you're planning for 2026. Anything to add? Any technical things you're planning you can share?
Yeah. So the thing I'm most excited about, into 26 and as we go out further, and like this is more like commentary on the AI economy, kind of writ large here. That's still emerging. But what we're seeing with a lot of our customers, I think is really resonating, is and we got to figure out what to name this thing, but I'll describe what it is, which is our system today. Like we said, it's AI first, and then it's tools and people, and then we sort of deliver those results back. But what we don't often talk about between AI and tools is analytics and scoring. And so what I mean by that, let's take it in the captioning setting because it's the simplest. Dubbing's a little more complex. But if you have an AI model, and I just mentioned AI can be really good for English captioning if you have a single speaker, we score it. And we score it for internal use. We need to know how much to pay that captioner. If they only have to do a very little to get that to the quality level we need, you don't have to pay as much. If they have to clean up lots and lots and it's going to take them hours, we need to pay them more. So we've built all these predictive models that tell you how good the AI is and also tell you where the AI fails and where it doesn't. And we use those internally. Well, the realization we've had over the last year or two, as our customers have had, macroeconomic climates, made them more budget sensitive, things like that, they would love to see those analytics themselves so they could use them. So in a captioning setting, what this looks like is we run an AI model for you, and then we give you a score. And then we give the operational decision and keys over to you. So you decide, is the AI good enough? Is it not good enough? Do you want us to upgrade? So this concept of AI plus scores that we give you and analytics we give you to have you make a decision, help you make a good decision about how to allocate your budget, and sometimes upgrade with our solution. And even when you upgrade, giving optionality there. So we started this conversation saying there's a big difference between back catalog e-learning and Netflix original theatrical. We call that the dial. So even when you upgrade, you should be able to set the dial exactly where you want to optimize your budget. So this shifting this model to AI and then scoring and letting you decide, do you need experts at all? And if yes, where do you want to set the dial? And doing that across all the services. I would say with captioning today in English, there is a lot of experimentation with just AI. I'll just say. And there is lots of upgrades still. On the dubbing side, it's all expert in the loop. It's all human in the loop for any serious buyers. But we still want to give you the analytics. We still want to give you the scoring so you can see and you can learn. And as it evolves and gets better, we want to be transparent about that with the customers so they can see the evolution of the technology, in real time.
I think that, which I'm very excited about, and it applies to even other markets where education, for example, with ADA Title II in the U.S., they now have to caption and describe way more, thousands of hours more content than they're used to. This is the only way to do it, is to have more of an AI pass with intelligence to understand what really matters. The other thing I'd say is we are building something that I'll speak for myself. I'm very excited about in terms of what we're doing with localization. Dubbing is a great example. We've not done a great job of telling that story yet, and I think the world is going to learn what we've built. This is a great start to that. And we're talking with you.
That's a good start. I was going to say, yeah.
But we have not really shown everyone what we are capable of in localization, and people don't know who we are as a localization provider still. And I think that's going to change over the next year. And I think people might be surprised what we've been able to build.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time today. This was a good first step in telling the story. So,
that's right. Thank you,
Florian.
Florian.
Catching up in person. Thank you.